Hello, listeners. This is Janine
and Kristen
from Henrico Casa. You are listening to our podcast, Vigilant Voices. Living life every day. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Vigilant Voices, our podcast from Henrico Casa. We are glad to have you with us.
Yes, we are, because we love these conversations. You, like us, want to know more about the challenges facing children and families, because together we all want to ensure that no child faces continued abuse, neglect, or trauma.
Yes. And so in each of our episodes, Kristen and I talk through trends that we see in our work sometimes, but then also specifically what we see or what we know that can help us best support children and teens.
Yep. And many of the topics we try to address are raised by our CASA advocates because they relate to challenges, these advocates are seeing in their cases. So they're issues and obstacles specific to children who have lived through trauma. But not all of the topics we address are isolated to CASA and the children we serve. They are often just so much bigger than that. And
that is what we are going to attempt to tackle today in the topic that we really see as all-encompassing to children, teens, frankly, parents as well, regardless of what's going on at home. And so we are going to dive a little bit into technology.
Yep. Love it. Hate it. It's here to stay, right?
Depending on the day, I might have a different answer. But that's right. And let's be real. We know that we are living in a digital world. And while technology can open up amazing opportunities for all of us, but children included, to learn and connect with others, I do think that we need to really understand that it can also expose them to lots of risks that, many parents and caregivers, and I think this goes especially to sometimes grandparents or kinship caregivers, that we're not always comfortable navigating.
Right. And can you blame them?
No, not at all.
Right.
Because even when I think about how much the world has changed and how quickly technology is moving us forward and continues to change, it is a lot to keep up with.
For sure.
And then it's an extra amount when we already feel behind, and we're not comfortable using it.
Yeah.
And we really do see it when grandparents or sometimes even great-grandparents, take custody of children. Technology almost always comes up as a big concern or question mark that they have and just don't know where to turn or what to do.
Yeah, and this is making me think of a recent CASA story in our office with a little boy who I'll call Bryce. Bryce and his siblings have been living in foster care, kind of on again, off again, while their mom works through steps in her recovery plan. And the hope has been that she'll stabilize and that the boys can be reunited with her.
Which, as we always talk about, listener, that is certainly the hope if it's safe for the children.
Right. But, realistically, as of now, their CASA advocate isn't sure how things will progress. Bryce has supervised visits with his mom, and all of the professionals involved agree that supervision is necessary. At this time, it's just unsafe and unhealthy for Bryce's interactions with her to be unsupervised.
Is there a specific reason that those visits are supervised?
So Bryce's mom has relapsed multiple times and often tests positive for drug use. And so Bryce never really knows what version of mom will show up at the visit, so it'll be on the phone. But the mom has been really upset by needing to be supervised, right? And so recently she slipped Bryce a secret phone so they could communicate without anyone knowing.
Okay. Yeah, that's complicated.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's two scenarios here. We've got Bryce, who is probably already worried about mom, confused about inconsistent communications and what that means.
Yep.
But wanting to maintain contact. And so now he finds himself in quote unquote secret communication, but probably then without some protection and boundaries that are needed on said secret phone.
Right. All true. And Bryce is being cared for by someone who doesn't know much about technology and doesn't know how to monitor phone usage and that sort of thing. So it's all been a little complicated.
Yeah.
So I'll just kind of plan to tell you more about what happens with Bryce at the end of the episode.
All right. As you always do, leave us with a little bit of a cliffhanger. But, but really in the meantime, we do want to dive a little bit into the pitfalls of technology and kids and just being thoughtful about different aspects.
Right. Because, let's pause for a second to say technology can be wonderful, right? Kids use tablets to read, play educational games.
Yep.
They do video chats with relatives who live far away. So like anything else, it comes with challenges and kids need guidance to stay safe.
Right. And as with anything, open communication, I think, is really important.
Right. Both ways.
Right. And caregivers sometimes feel like they need to know all of the latest apps and the security settings or boundaries. But, truly, I think moving away from the device itself and actually having just a direct conversation is quite a powerful tool.
Sure.
Such as, asking the kids to demonstrate the apps that they're using, show you the tools or what they're using for school and why. Why are they using it? What is the intent and what's the purpose?
Yeah. And then, be ready to listen to their answers.
Yeah.
This is making me think I really struggled with one particular app that my teens were asking for.
Yeah.
And when I took time to really listen to them, I realized this app was kind of what their friends and others were using as texting. Like even their teams and youth groups were using it. And so not allowing that app was cutting them off from good things I actually wanted them to be connected to.
Yeah, but at least you were skeptical at first, right? But I also, knowing you, just because I know you well, is that you sort of allowed it with some guidance and rules 100%. And some constraints, right? And I think that's a tip that we would absolutely want to pass along to any and all caregivers or family members listening is, talking with kids about the internet and technology and safety early and often is really, really important.
Definitely.
Something that might seem very simple to us, but if children are new to technology, what do they do if someone they don't know tries to contact them or sends them a text messages, or asking them to do something, but, really how they would handle if they saw something inappropriate. What would I do?
Yeah. And in my house, one of the things we've talked about is how to gracefully exit a group chat.
I like that.
Because those group chats can turn really ugly and out of control.
Which is crazy. But yes, it can. And I think that's a good example. But, the long-term goal with anything, right, is to make sure children feel comfortable coming to you as a parent, a caregiver, if something is making them uncomfortable or they're unsure.
Sure. And, part of that is creating a safe space for these talks. If a child admits that they saw something scary or made a mistake online, try not to overreact, right? Be a safe space, thank them for telling you, and walk through whatever next steps you need to take together.
I think it's a really good point because I think, kids are going to make mistakes. We now just have the fun that they're going to make mistakes online.
Yeah.
And, beyond just in person. And so, we have to remember that kids watch what we do.
Yeah.
Right. And so caregivers can be role models in this way by practicing healthy online behavior themselves, which is put the phone down.
Yeah.
Limit screen time. Don't overshare on social media. Respect people's privacy, right?
Yeah. And, another topic caregivers should be talking to kids about is regarding how they're using technology for learning or even just as a source, a go-to for information.
Yeah, in the positive way.
Yeah.
Right? Now the benefit is that, boy, there is a lot of information that they can access in a good way at their fingertips.
Right. But do we want them using TikTok as their news source?
Maybe not.
I don't know. Yeah.
And I think then that sort of begs the question that, caregivers should really teach their children to ask, okay, I might like this TikTok, but is the source reliable? Or maybe another one is, does this sound realistic or just too good to be true that if I do X, then Y will immediately happen?
Yeah. And, we just need to teach them critical thinking in general because it's a lifelong skill that will hopefully protect them from misinformation and harm.
And so, we've talked, I think, so far in this episode about communicating with children about the technology that they are using.
Right.
Being open in actual communication, right, is definitely a really good doorway to keep them safe and healthy. But we also know that it's really tempting for youth to want to rebel and then sneak onto their devices, spend more time online than they're supposed to, visit that sketchy site that their friends have mentioned that they're now curious about. We could go on and on.
Oh, yeah. And that's why we can't just stop with this open communication that we're talking about, right? Kids also need supervision and monitoring.
Just straight up, it just is necessary. And I think that's especially true for younger kids. And this is where caregivers should really keep devices in common areas that the whole family is accessing. And that way, what they're doing online is more visible and then easier for family members to check in on them.
Right. And when you're thinking about the technology that your children they're using, think about parental controls, right? Most devices, most apps have some sort of built-in safety tools to limit screen time or block inappropriate sites, or maybe even send like activity reports.
Right.
I'm not saying in any way they're foolproof because there's a lot of ways to get around them, but at least they're a first layer of protection.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, this might sound a little crazy because we're talking about, you know, quality FaceTime with kids, but I really would also recommend that maybe spending time together online is actually a benefit because, you know, then you're interacting with them and maybe playing a game that they're into or watching a video that they think is interesting, but you're watching it with them. And I think that can help you as a parent, a caregiver, a family member, like understand what they're doing, but what they're into. But then I also think it turns their time with that device or technology into a shared activity instead of this like secret one that they're hiding.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great tip. And gosh, I would say also just remember that you're the adult, right? Like, you know what's best. You can say no. You can set limits. And if a child is maybe asking for something new technology, new app, do a little homework, right? Check out the reviews, look at the age ratings. Make sure it's appropriate for your child before you let it in.
Talk to your friends if their kids are using it. I mean, I think, you know, I think all of this makes me now think about the apps that kids may be downloading and then the type of information that those apps and programs request. And then that leads us down to a natural path of just how do we protect privacy, right? Such a critical thing.
It is. And, you know, for kids, it's the simple things like trying to help them set profiles to private. You know, teach them to avoid posting their address or their phone number, you know, anything we wouldn't want to be out there for all to see. And really encouraging them to only connect with people that they know in real life. Because that can go such a long way in keeping them safe.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, the really hard part with privacy settings is that they change very often and quite frequently. And so what was private last month went through an update and is now no longer private this month, or they've changed a policy. So I think it's really worth checking those settings on a regular basis.
And, you know, in terms of privacy too, we have to remind kids that once something's online, like, it's not private. You know, I think they think things are private, but you can't take it back and someone can screenshot it. And so something that you thought was on a private setting is now being shared quickly off that setting. So the rule of thumb is don't post anything you wouldn't want shared widely.
Yes, I say the same thing about writing an email, text messaging. I mean, any of that, right? So I do think it can all feel overwhelming because there's so much to keep up on, especially if you are being or want to be vigilant about protecting children and monitoring their technology use, because truly things are always changing.
They are. In real talk, this is all so addictive in nature. So even safe content or things that you're using the appropriate privacy controls on, it can still be a problem if it's taking over a child's life.
It's so true. And I think this goes back to where you said of setting some limits and just sometimes also saying no. But, you know, time limits is just a really simple but good example that can be key. And that's both for kids and adults.
Oh my gosh, like, we need to stop scrolling.
And we're all guilty of it. I mean, we do, right? But for the benefit of all of us at all different and various ages, I think encouraging that screen-free family time, getting outside, eating meals together, you know, reading books, right? I mean, just helping kids and ourselves learn that a balance is good. You're going to use the device, but we can do other things and have fun too.
And just one more little thing I want to interject in terms of setting limits. So watch out for constant notifications on kids' phones and your phone, right? Like, use downtime features, turn off alerts for apps. It can really reduce distractions and kind of that pressure kids feel and we as adults feel to be online 24/7.
That's a great idea and a good reminder. And as an example, I do not have any notifications on my phone.
That's great.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So of course it forces me to be behind.
I was like, is that why you don't answer my text right away?
Yes, exactly. Not right away. Give me a minute. But, you know, kids, I think, sometimes can think of those boundaries as punishment.
Right.
But that's not necessarily true, because it really is a way of teaching kids healthy habits that will serve them for life. And I don't know if we might wrap back around here on Bryce's situation.
Yeah, I would love to. So I mean, gosh, Bryce had such mixed feelings about having the secret phone, right? Because it was a direct line to his biological mom, and he loves her. Yeah. You know, he wants to talk to her.
Absolutely.
But he also knows how bad he feels sometimes when he talks to her, how scary it feels sometimes, depending on, you know, how she's responding to things. And he really didn't feel great about hiding the fact that he was talking to her.
Right, because he knew he shouldn't be, right? And so did his CASA advocate know or find out about the phone?
You know what? She found out. Okay. And that was because Bryce had a trusted relationship with her.
Oh, nice.
He just flat out told her. And this is where a hard boundary had to be reestablished. You know, it wasn't mentally or emotionally healthy for Bryce to have unsupervised talks with his mom.
Yeah. And I'm sure that was difficult for Bryce, too, because he didn't feel well sort of sneaking and hiding that, but also he didn't want to lose that direct contact and direct line to his mom.
Right. You know, but to balance that out, he also knew how good he felt in his foster home.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he had no doubt that the things that his CASA advocate and his foster mom were doing and saying to protect him were because they really did care about him and they really did want to help him. And he had so much anxiety about interacting with his mom.
Yeah.
And, you know, having the safe adults in his life kind of set a clear boundary for him really released him from that anxiety. And so he's still living with his foster mom and siblings, and the future isn't totally clear, but he's safe and he's secure.
Yeah. And so physically safe and secure right now, but also emotionally safe and secure.
Right.
And, you know, that is really what we want. And certainly in this case for Bryce, but for the siblings that you mentioned, but really all children.
Right.
Right. And so, you know, we rambled a bit and went down some paths on technology. But, you know, technology itself isn't bad. And in fact, it can be incredibly beneficial. But kids also need guidance.
Right. So listener, just a reminder that we kind of talked through 4 main ways that we can offer guidance today. So we want to remind you of those. The first is open communication, which, you know, is talking about safety with the kids and modeling good tech habits. The second is supervision and monitoring.
Right. And I think that just boils down to we need to be involved in their online world.
Right. So that's second. Third is to guide them in protecting their privacy. You know, that's using the privacy settings, that's teaching them not to overshare, that kind of thing.
Right.
And number 4 is to set healthy limits and boundaries with the goal of finding balance.
I think those are all great and also achievable.
Yes.
But you might be able to guess what our call to action today is. And it's really just to maybe think about those 4 and pick one area to focus on. And certainly reach out to us if you need a tip or resource.
100%. We're always happy to help.
And you know, we started this a little bit in some ways with some of our kinship caregivers, especially because technology can really feel intimidating. But remember that you don't have to be an expert on this. I think just being present, asking questions, and encouraging safe habits and being aware of what's happening really honestly goes a really long way.
It does. And remember that our CASA advocates can help bridge the gap if needed. You know, they know how stressful these transitions can be, and they often share resources with caregivers. You know, they can demonstrate some of the safety tools. They can encourage the caregivers to talk with the children about technology. There's just so much.
There's so much. And there's so much, but we're out of time today. And I feel like, as always, especially with something like a huge topic like this, that we've barely hit the tip of the iceberg when it comes to technology. And boy, we didn't even get into technology and mental health, did we?
Oh my gosh, but I have a really good book recommendation for that. So listener, check out The Anxious Generation. I'll link to it in the show notes.
Yes. And, you know, we didn't even mention AI,
right?
Artificial intelligence, which is a whole other area of technology that we have to understand too.
Well, Janine, I think you just identified the topic for our next episode.
Start planning.
Yeah, but in the meantime, listener, remember that kids don't just need protection in the physical world. They need it in the virtual world too. And when we work together, we can keep them safe in both. Thank you for listening to Vigilant Voices, Henrico Casa's new podcast. We have a vision for all children to live in safe, healthy homes. You can help us make that happen. Tell a friend about our podcast and find us on social media.
I believe in the better days.